We've had some more news for 7 Days to Die Alpha 21, and today we're going to be going over all the new news as well as all the other confirmed features coming. As of right now, by the way, we have no release date, so that will not be in this video. If you want to stay up to date on 7 Days to Die news, then you know what button to press. And with that out of the way, let's get right into the newest news. The first and newest confirmed feature for 7 Days to Die Alpha 21 is the removal of the Sexual Tyrannosaurus perk. Now, stamina will be affected by the weapons-specific perk. For example, Pummel Pete will reduce the amount of stamina used for clubs. This is a huge change to the game and addresses a major concern that a lot of long-term players have had about the game. For the longest time, strength and intellect have been the undisputed kings of this game, and it seems like this change is working towards loosening that up and making the other trees more viable. There's a lot of other stuff coming in this update that seems to be working towards the same goal, but I'll get into those in a second. As someone who plays this game almost always on Insane Nightmare, and as a result almost always plays a strength and intelligence build, it will be really nice to loosen that up and be able to play with other playstyles a bit more easily. This is a solid change in my opinion and should really help balance out the game. Also, alongside that, we see that other perk changes are going to be revealed at some point too. Right now, that's all we know for perk changes. Anyway, let's keep going. We're going to be seeing some player HUD changes in Alpha 21, including a danger meter to show the danger level of biomes and POIs. We don't know specifically how this is going to work, but this is a feature we have known is coming for a while now. Now, for the benefit of new players, there'll be some kind of HUD element that displays the estimated difficulty of the biome or POI you're currently in, which should really help new players from straying into dangerous locations and biomes, as that can really harm their initial experience. If they know nothing about the game and happen to wander straight into the wasteland, they're going to get a very difficult first try. This feature doesn't really matter to me personally because I know all the current POIs like the back of my hand and I know all the different types of things that happens in biomes. I'd love to hear what some more casual or even just new players think about this change in particular. This next change is a really nice one. Wires are going to only be visible when you are holding the wire cutting tool. What this essentially seems to mean is that there will be no more ugly wires around your bases. Everything will appear wireless until you take out your wiring tool and you'll be able to see all the wires you've placed. I'm sure most people will agree that if a game gives you electricity mechanics and then makes you suffer through those horrible wires, it just sucks the fun out of making bases with electricity. But now all your turrets, lights, electronics, whatever, will appear wireless most of the time, unless you're actively holding the rewiring tool, which I think is a 10 out of 10 change. It's such a small change, but it'll have huge benefits for people who really like base building. Now remember when I said about them nerfing intellect? Well, here we can see some of that now. The secret stash is being removed. That's right, the treasure trove of easy gear is now gone. No more day 2 pump action shotguns unless you get really damn lucky. Which will of course reduce the power of the better barter perk substantially, and in turn reduce the power of the entire intellect tree, which is going to bring it down a notch in terms of how necessary it is to your playthrough. Along with that, the traders are getting new compounds. This is long overdue for most of them, to be honest. We saw Rect's compound get reworked in Alpha 20. Now it has 2 entrances and it's a little bit more tightly designed and secure. So I'm excited to see what the level designers reimagine the other 4 trader compounds as. Trader inventories will also be rebalanced with the new crafting progression. I'll get into the new crafting progression later on in the video, so stick around for that. But basically, they're rebalancing the trader's progression, hopefully so that it's less powerful, because currently it's very powerful. And we're also seeing further specializations of traders and what they carry. So if you didn't know, traders all have specialties at the moment, which are Bob is specialized with vehicles, Joel with armor and tools, Hugh with weapons and ammo, Rect with food and seeds, and Jen is specialized with medicine. And it seems they intend to make that even more noticeable in 7 Days to Die Alpha 21. Now I would say that's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, more depth to the traders means more to learn about and more to think about, which I think is good. On the other hand though, you don't choose which traders you spawn near, and some of them are obviously more valuable than others, meaning there's a bit of RNG as to the start you get, and further specialization of those traders could make spawning next to, say, Rect even more annoying, and spawning next to Hugh even more powerful. And as it stands, there's no real way to choose who you spawn next to, which means you might just get a really terrible start. if you get bad luck. Overall though, I lean towards the trader changes being good. We'll very much have to see how it goes in practice though, but in theory it seems like this could all be good for the game's health. Next up we have the chunk reset option. This will essentially reset a chunk in the game to its original generated state if a player has not entered that chunk in a certain amount of time. Currently the default for this setting will actually be disabled. The interval for this can be increased up to 70 days. Now in case that all wasn't quite clear what that means, if you do not enter a chunk, which is a patch of the world, I think it's 16 by 16 blocks, in up to let's say 70 days, it will reset, meaning the loot, POI, the cars, resources, anything built there will be put back to their default state as if it had just been spawned in on day one. The land claim block though will prevent this from happening. Now this is a good change for people who really like respawning loot and resources and have lots of long-term servers and worlds, so that they don't run out of things like cars and lampposts. It's a small change, but it is a good one for the health of the game if players want to enable that, keep their worlds going for a long time. Next change I really like, spears. They have finally listened to my prayers. Spear damage has been buffed, spears will now have a conventional power attack, and you'll no longer be able to throw the weapon. For most of us this is going to be a major improvement to spears and will make them much more in line with how good the other weapons currently are. Again, this is good for balancing things away from strength and intellect, as this means even on Insane Nightmare difficulty, assuming the spears are buffed to a sufficient level, you can just go straight into perception and use spears and actually not want to tear your own arms off, which currently, in Insane Nightmare, is impossible because spears suck on that difficulty, and as you can probably tell, I love this change. And here comes some other stuff which I maybe don't love as much. The drinking water rebalance is of course going to be a major part of Alpha 21. We're going to be seeing murky water as a loot only item, and the only water item you can loot. Jars are also gone. A workstation called the Dew Collector is also being added, and players will be able to drink from water sources directly with their hands. But drinking this murky water will give you 5 damage and a chance of dysentery. The pot is also now required to boil water at all, instead of it just being faster like it currently is. And of course, glue crafting will be adjusted with this. So basically you won't be able to make a jar, fill the jar, boil the jar, and have water. You'll have to loot for a jar of murky water and then boil it into boiled water, and then when you drink that water, the jar is just gone, leaving you needing to go loot for more water or set up the Dew Collector, which is the new crafting station, which will passively generate purified water. I believe it's currently estimated to be about 3 purified water a day, which, as it currently stands, is not a lot of water to be getting. And this crafting station is going to of course require the ability to craft, which again I'll get into that in a second, why that's going to be kind of hard. But on top of all of it, you're going to have to find something called a water filter, which is a rare loot only item that can be found similarly to a beaker. I believe you may be able to purchase it from traders as well. This is a change, to be sure. Water seems like it's going to be a lot harder to get a hold of, or alternatively, it's going to be more important to use your food for healing that early game damage. It also seems like it's going to be more important to be using things like vitamins and the various teas to cure your dysentery, because as it stands in Alpha 20, dysentery is a mechanic you probably will never engage with. So this does seem to be trying to push that mechanic further forward to improve the survival elements of the game. I don't think it's a terrible idea to rebalance the water system, although we are like 10 years into the game and what we have would have been fine, but I'm really not entirely sure if this was the way to go about reworking the water. I'm sure you will have heard plenty of criticism about this change, or you will if you look in the comments, so I won't waste your time regurgitating all of that. This is a very controversial change. Next up we have armor. We have new iron armor and new military armor, as well as whatever this is. We don't actually know which armor this is, but we can see it. Plus some more to come. Presumably all the basic armors in the game are being up-resed. This doesn't seem to be the full armor rework we saw teased for Alpha 20 back in Alpha 19, because that feature seems to have been pushed to the roadmap rather than being a confirmed feature for this. So this appears to purely be a cosmetic upgrade of the existing 6 sets of armor in the game, or at least 3 of them. Next change is water simulation. Basically, water, the thing you interact with in the world and place with a bucket, is going to be a lot more workable now. I'm not going to go too in depth in this. I assume it's going to work like Minecraft. Most people have played Minecraft. If you're really interested, pause and read this info box. Moving on, we have doors. Double doors are now in the game. Yay. Partially damaged doors with large holes can be shot or meleeed through to damage the enemies on the other side. Basically, door hitboxes will now be accurate, so if you can see a zombie on the other side of a door, you can actually shoot them or hit them with your weapon, which is a solid change. I can't think of any reason that would be a bad thing. Next, we have interactive environmental hazards. POIs may now have environmental hazards like a broken gas pipe, spewing flames which will in some way have to be avoided by the player, or fixed to add a bit more puzzle and challenge to some POIs. This is a cool change. It'll add a little bit more depth to POIs, but I doubt it's going to be an earth-shaking change, so I'm just going to move on. Next up, we have one of, if not the most controversial parts of this update, the Learn by Reading system. Yes, they renamed it from the Learn by Looting system. We'll be getting 23 new crafting skills, along with 23 new crafting magazines. Perks will no longer affect your item crafting, schematics are removed aside from item mod component schematics, and the crafting skill is increased by finding that relevant crafting magazine that corresponds to it. The higher the skill, the better you are at crafting that type of thing, for example, shotguns. Each level has a separate range in the skill spectrum, so you have to work through primitive to iron to steel, and being able to make a blue stone axe doesn't mean you can make a blue steel axe. Some skills have 100 levels, but others have less. Skill magazines can be found, bought, or received as quest rewards, and these skill magazines will apparently be found in logical places. For example, a shotgun crafting book would be found in a gun store. Perks will now affect the probability of finding parts and magazines related to their weapon, so taking boomstick will increase the amount of shotgun crafting magazines and shotgun parts that you'll find. When you max out a crafting skill, the chance to find that magazine is then reduced, but you will keep your bonus chance to find the weapon parts. Basically, read a book, get better at crafting. Stone tools are easier to craft and make at higher qualities than steel tools, and this is replacing the schematic system and the perk crafting system entirely, with the exception of item mods like the fuel saver or the extended magazine or the woodcutter, things like that. So to craft a forge, for example, you'll have to have some level of the workstation skill. This is another extremely controversial change that has been covered to death, and you've likely heard the overall opinion on this, or are likely to hear those opinions soon. My opinion is that this sounds kind of bad having more RNG to play with, but I will reserve my judgment until I play with it. And finally, the last thing we have for Alpha 21 confirmed currently is of course new POIs and new decorations for the POIs, including new cars, trucks, and tractors, none of which will be drivable before you ask. One notable thing that is not coming in Alpha 21 is bandits. Bandits have been confirmed as a feature that almost definitely won't be in Alpha 21, which is sad, but the devs have gone on record saying that they want it to be a big reveal, and that they don't want to do a reveal with the bandits half finished. And that is absolutely all the confirmed Alpha 21 features as of the 13th of December 2022. But what do you think of these changes? Let me know down in the comments, and while you're there, consider subscribing for more Alpha 21 news and coverage when it eventually comes out in the year 2053. A like would also be very appreciated. On the right you'll see a video where I go in depth on that last crafting change if you want a more in-depth explanation on the Learn by Reading system. Also, if you want to support the channel, my Patreon is linked in the description. Speaking of which, thank you to my channel members and patrons for making this video possible, and I'll see you in the next video.